You're listening to the Sticks in the Six podcast. Here are your co-hosts, Andrew Forbes, Peter Barricini, and Alex Hobson.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Sticks in the Six podcast, episode 113, brought to you by the fine folks at the Indie Ale House in Toronto and Variety Sports Network. Happy to be here again live for you guys tonight, post game after a rough loss, Peter. But as you can see, it's just Peter and I again. Alex is still enjoying those slopes out in BC, and we get to enjoy the pictures that he sends us, anyways. But lots to talk about. Tarasenko trade, Chychrun talk is really heating up now. Obviously, the Maple Leafs in a really important stretch here as well. But before we get to all of that, Peter, how you doing this week, buddy?
Yeah, not that I don't. I absolutely love doing these shows, but I would love to take a good vacation, either slopes, maybe not cold right now, but maybe just a warm getaway, because I could really do for some R&R right now. But I'm doing good, Obviously, as you know my musical takes and everything like that, and this is a big week in terms of band that I've been huge on, and I've loved ever since the beginning.
If you're going down the Lincoln Park Road here, I'm a huge fan of it.
I sure am going down the Lincoln Park Road. The 20th anniversary release of Meteora. That is by far one of my favorite albums, and one of those unreleased tracks, or some of those unreleased tracks, being put out for all of us to hear right now. It's bittersweet, emotional, considering the passing of Chester Bennington. And man, Lost has been on repeat nonstop for me. And the first time I heard it, I had to hold back the tears, because man, just an influential person with his lyrics and his voice, and the emotion that he carried was just huge. But yeah, I always like to give my musical takes every now and then. That's my one right now, because hey, it's Linkin Park, one of the best bands that I have ever listened to, and one of the best albums, probably a top 10 for me right there. But that's it for me. Loving some new music, especially from them. How you doing, man?
Man, it's been a week of mediocrity here in the Forbes house. Medicine and mediocrity. As you can probably hear with my voice, I'm going to try and make it through this episode, but I went down hard. First full week back at work after Pat leave, and the whole house got sick. Oakley had a fever for 5 days, 6 days. My wife probably actually withheld the sickness the best. Harlow's having a rough time, and man, as I mentioned in our pre-show here before we got going, I've been taking melatonin just to get to sleep, and last night was kind of a shit show for me. I decided to go the Tylenol nighttime route, didn't work. Went down, had some NyQuil, didn't work, and threw in the melatonin at 4 a.m. Woke up in a beautiful haze. So it's been a hell of a week, but always happy to get on here with you and talk some hockey and get back to the grassroots of what kind of got us going 2.5 years ago. And
exactly.
I want to mention off the top of the show, great episode last week with Patrick Dennis Jr. So if you missed that, definitely check it out. We were talking about the marketing and the marketability of the NHL and its players. He had some great insight into that as well. Obviously, with the Not With the Hype podcast and all the stuff that they talk about, pop culture, all that kind of stuff as well. Mm-hmm. So it's great to have him on. One of our top 10 episodes all time in terms of downloads. So shout out to Patrick for coming on and doing that with us. Obviously, no guest this week. We're just going to talk trade talk. Leafs, are they getting in there with the Chychrun talk? But before we jump into Leaf talk, we do have to talk the Tarasenko trade. And Peter, this was a big one. New York Rangers making a splash. They were one of the teams that we were thinking that maybe Patrick Kane might be going to. What are your thoughts on Tarasenko going to the New York Rangers?
It shows that the Rangers mean business. I mean, when you land one of the biggest names out there, and his name's been on the market for some time, it was just a matter of when, because even when he was talking at the All-Star game, it didn't seem like there was getting any traction between him and the Blues. And it kind of seemed like a trade was going to happen before the deadline. Lo and behold, it happened right after the All-Star break. So Obviously a big win for the Rangers because you got like an elite level top 6 sniper on your side, possibly on the top line, and I just don't know where St. Louis was going with this return. I really don't. I mean, big win, like I said, big win for the Rangers. But when you reacquire a fourth liner that you traded for Pavel Buchnevich previously, you get that same fourth liner back, and you get a C tier level prospect for the kind of production that Vladimir Tarasenko is capable of doing. I mean, aside from the first round pick and the fourth round pick, I mean, obviously, and they even got Nico Mikkola as well. But like for both players, the most important pieces to be those draft picks, it does seem kind of underwhelming for me. It didn't seem like something that could move the needle, not necessarily towards a rebuild, but to bring in some like quality pieces that could try and help out right now and try and jumpstart the ship again, because it just didn't seem quite right.
Yeah, now we all know Tarasenko was, he's been wanting out of St. Louis for some time, and he requested a trade a few years back, and then, the ship seemed to right itself, and he got back in the lineup and was playing well, and St. Louis was playing well, and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, to go after a guy who's essentially a rental right now, hasn't signed an extension with New York, and to give up what you gave up, to me, I don't see, maybe what they're thinking in the conditional first rounder. Obviously protected as well, but at the same time, they did get Mikkola, which might be the kind of incentive piece to make this deal for a rental like Tarasenko. Not saying that he won't re-sign with the Rangers. That could still happen, obviously. But in saying that, if you're St. Louis, you get a conditional first round pick in a draft that, we've discussed how deep this draft could be. And then a fourth round pick next year. I mean, obviously conditional as well. But Sammy Blais returns to a place where he's already comfortable. You get Hunter Skinner, who's a a decent defensive prospect. For me, I think the biggest thing is the Blues aren't near the bottom of the league in terms of like they're going to be in it for Bedard. And to me, this is like we're throwing in the towel kind of move. O'Reilly's gone for the season. Tarasenko, see you later. You still have pieces in Kyrou and Robbie Thomas, and that could still make this a relatively interesting year with 30 games left in the regular season. So I don't, and we'll get to Columbus in a second here, obviously with our Leaf talk, as they're, favorites right now in the 2023 draft. But if you're the St. Louis Blues at the moment, you're not in a position to kind of say, hey, we're throwing in the towel, we're going for Bedard. So to me, that the move just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I guess the first rounder is something worth looking at, considering that Tarasenko likely walks at the end of this year anyways as a free agent. So maybe that's what you're looking at, but I don't know. I think it's a great move for the Rangers for the short term. You get a solid right winger, gives you a little bit extra for that playoff push. Tarasenko may be familiar with Panarin and Shesterkin, and you get kind of that camaraderie in the room as well. So that might help them. And they did it earlier than the deadline, which also gives them that little bit of time to build that chemistry that we talk about at the deadline, going out and make that big move that maybe stirs up the room a little too much. So I don't know. Obviously, we'll look back on this trade and kind of be able to tell you a little bit more about it, but definitely a big blockbuster heading into the deadline. And you have to wonder if this is the first piece to fall in what could be maybe one of the bigger deadlines in recent memory.
Yeah, like you said, I think the first rounders are going to be key because they are already in a top 10 spot right now, given where they are in the standings. But that conditional first, they're getting, according to the Cap Friendly, the pick is, let me try. Okay, here we go. Let's do that take again now that I actually found it. The conditions for the pick are the 2023 first round pick will be the later of the New York 2023 first round and Dallas 2023 first rounders. So depending on who has the later pick, that's the pick that's going over to St. Louis. So
and I mean, regardless, it's a first round pick though, right? Like
in a very deep draft. So whether it's obviously based on standings right now with looking at Cap Friendly, it's either the 26th or 28th pick right now, no matter what. You're still going to get a top 6 talent if you're looking for a forward in that range, no matter what. So I think those are going to be key building blocks going forward.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And speaking of prospects, it's not on our board of what we're going to talk about this episode, but I want to get your take on Zachary Leroux. Suspended indefinitely for spearing a 16-year-old fan during a QMJHL game. This guy's had trouble in the past. Is this an issue that's going to follow him around? Or, I mean, we saw how much it affected kind of like his draft stock a little bit. He's obviously got a temper. He's got a lack of impulse control. Like, what the hell happened here?
Yeah, and I wrote his draft profile too. Like, he has that offensive ability and ability to get under your skin, but he crosses and walks that edge a lot, and that is huge. Obviously, we've seen he's been suspended many times before for like on ice incidents, and obviously he needs to tone that down. He needs to keep everything under control. But now when you go out and attack a fan like that and you spear them, that to me is absolutely disgusting. It's despicable. It crosses the line, and given how he's like part of the Panthers organization, I would, if I'm the GM, management, scouts, whatever, I would like to have a sit down with him and like, listen, you pull any more stunts like this again, it's over. Because like, obviously, it's I don't know what he was thinking in doing that. I really don't. And it didn't even seem like the fan was instigating him or whatever based on the clip. But at the same time, it's just like, what are you doing? They need to literally tell him, get this under control or this is going to be the end, because we're not going to tolerate any kind of stuff like that, especially at the next level.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think because like, it's one thing we saw it, 30, 40 years ago in the NHL, even 50 years ago. We're talking like 60s, 70s, where like,
oh, yeah.
You had Mike Milbury go in the stands and beat a fan with his shoe. And back then, like, you looked at it as like, man, what the hell are you doing? Like, the wires crossed, we get it, but like, what the hell are you doing? And that was instigated, right? Like Ty Domi in the box in Philly. Like I think back to these moments and like there was instigation there. Man, you're a kid trying to make the show here, and you've already had kind of a foggy past in terms of like your overall discipline. Yeah. So to come out and spear a 16-year-old kid in the stands, like, I mean, like he better have fucking known this kid, and he better have done something to Zachary Leroux to have this happen, because otherwise there's absolutely no reason for you to come out and say, hey, yeah, the wires crossed and I speared a 16-year-old kid while I was, leaving the ice. There's no accountability there. And that's the problem. There's no accountability. So for me, like, I don't even have that conversation if I'm the Panthers at this point. I'm like, this kid needs to figure it out on his own. And if maybe he needs to go into like, go into a program and figure out his shit before he has an opportunity to make the AHL, let alone the NHL. Like, this kid has zero discipline. And it takes me back to like, it's going to take that one little split second where he's like, has like a Perezhogin moment. You remember Perezhogin in the AHL where he turned around, swung his stick, smoked the guy in the side of the head. That's the kind of stuff that we're going to see from this kid if he doesn't get it under control.
Like the smallest thing will just set him off at this point.
Yeah, like, I mean, what goes through your head when you're exiting the ice surface to spear somebody? It just, to me, it makes zero sense. So, I mean, if you're listening right now and you haven't seen the clip, check it out. Zachary Leroux, QMJHL, speared a fan. It's just like, I don't even have words for it because it's so stupid. Like, you have an opportunity here to be an NHL player, and you're gonna shit all over your own opportunity because you have to spear a fan. It's just, fans have been heckling for hundreds of years.
If you can't take the heckling, then
how are you going to make it?
Yeah.
How are you going to make it? Anyways.
And it's interesting that you brought it up, because if the fan did do something to warrant that, then okay, whatever. But still, you cross the line no matter what. But at the same time, it like looking at the video, and I've seen the video, it didn't quite seem like anything happened. And I'm trying to figure out, it looks kind of a little bit blurry, but I'm trying to pinpoint what actually happened to warrant that. And it's just so, like you said, it's just, I'm so dumbfounded by it.
Yeah, it's just my biggest thing is like, now with social media and the video coming out and everything like that, like if there was something that had happened that kind of like prefaced what happened, it would be out already. Like there'd be a conversation about it. And right now there's not.
I'm not seeing it. Yeah.
And with this guy's history, like, I mean, it kind of speaks for itself as well. We're going to jump into Toronto talk here. And before we get to the Leafs, the Maple Leafs will be hosting the 2024 NHL All-Star Game next year. Some big news, obviously, out of our All-Star weekend. We haven't met since the All-Star Game. And there was a tweet that came out from former host, I guess you can say, on Hockey Night in Canada, Andy Petrillo. And like, not to throw her under the bus or anything like that. Like I have a lot of respect for what Andy does. But at the same time, her tweet basically said like, oh, now that Toronto's getting the All-Star game, it shows just how important it is to the host city and that it does matter. And, we sat here with Alex 2 weeks ago and crucified the NHL All-Star game. You and I sat here last week and talked about how shitty the NHL All-Star skills competition was. And here's my thing. And this is kind of in response to that tweet, because I'm not changing my outlook on how much the All-Star game lacks importance in the overall spectrum of the NHL. Is it important? Absolutely not. When you name the players at the end of the season to the NHL first All-Star, that's got more importance to it than the actual game, than the actual skills competition. It's become a show, and we've talked about this on the last 2 episodes here. Is it important to the host city? Absolutely. You're hosting an event where you've got some of the top players from the NHL coming to your city. Doesn't even matter if you play a fucking game. At the end of the day, those guys are going out, having a few drinks, going to the bars. You're going to have people see these players around the city, see their faces, and get to interact with some of the best players in the game that maybe they only see once or twice because Gary Bettman has the best schedule in all of, the 4 major sports. Nathan McKinnon coming to Toronto more than just the one time every season, to have him there at the NHL All-Star game. Yeah, 100%. That's important. Things like that are important. To have those players, culminate in the city is important. But to sit there and say that this is going to be, it's a great event, everybody in Toronto is excited for it now because it's coming to Toronto. No, you're absolutely wrong. You're 100% wrong about that. I'm not excited for the NHL All-Star game coming to Toronto. I'm excited to see the superstars come to Toronto and culminate. They could go out and have a beer for all I care, and I'd be excited for that part of it, because now you've got the biggest names in all of hockey. Aside from the fact that we still have this stupid fan vote, who knows? Maybe fucking, Shane Wright will be at the All-Star game next year with 1 goal and 5 assists for the Seattle Kraken. Who the fuck knows? But my point being, to say that it's important because the All-Star game's in Toronto, I don't understand it. I don't know if you have any insight on that as well.
I was going to go back to 2016 when the Toronto Raptors hosted the NBA All-Star game. That was at the pinnacle of when basketball was at the height in Canada, and everything was starting to come full circle with the Toronto Raptors being in a competitive spot. Winning games, being in the playoffs, and being in the hunt for a championship. Was it just for show, or everyone just jumping on the bandwagon because the All-Star game was in Toronto? No. For the longest time, we've been craving a winning team in Toronto, and we had that with the Toronto Raptors. That season alone, they finished 56-26. That's absolutely impressive. And the fact that they had that All-Star game during a season where they were at the pinnacle shows that it gets everybody on board and it gets everybody excited, and it shows that everyone is going to be buzzing. They're going to be rooting for the home team no matter what. Same thing's going to happen with Toronto. The Maple Leafs are, despite playoff success, they are going to be an elite level team again next year. They're going to be one of the tops, and you're going to have a bunch of all-stars. You're going to have, if they do an all-star game
better
vote
be
or
fucking
whatever,
William Nylander. Better be in the all-star
telling
game.
you right now, if William Nylander is not there, I am going to lose it, because, man, he should have been there this season. He should have been, honestly, I think he should have replaced Austin Matthews. Nothing against Alexander Barkov, but it should have been William Nylander. He is having an all-star game or all-star like season, and hopefully next year with the game happening in Toronto, you will see Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Tavares. Hell, let's throw in Morgan Riley and Ilya Samsonov in there. Let's make it like a full line. Let's throw Timothy Liljegren and Rasmus Sandin. Let's go. I want to see a full Maple Leaf line for the All-Star game, or two, because it's 3-on-3, never mind 5-on-5. But yeah, no matter what, whether you think it's just everyone's just going to jump on it because, oh, it's the All-Star game. Nah. Fans resonate with the teams involved. It resonated with the All-Star game. It was buzzing. It's going to be the same thing this next year with Toronto hosting the NHL All-Star game. It really is.
And there you go. We got longtime listener Josh Brownlee tuning in on YouTube. Thanks, Josh, for tuning in. 100% has to be Nylander. Without a doubt, Josh, it's got to be Nylander. He should have been there this year. This guy's been unstoppable all season long. He's been the most consistent Leaf this year. He should have been there. But like I said, I mean, personally, I don't think whether he went or not mattered. It's the All-Star game, and the NHL's All-Star game is the biggest fucking joke in all of sports. So,
yeah.
And
the clip said we saw of him working out so that he wasn't taking a day off. So
no, absolutely. He's trying to make his brother better as well. Saw him on the ice as well. But before we jump over to our actual Leaf talk, quick word from our lovely sponsors over at the Indy Ale House. Hockey is back, and with it, so are the Maple Leafs. Getting ready for a night out or watching the game at home with the gang, what better way to do it than with a nice cold one from the folks at Indy Ale House in Toronto. With 2 locations in the city at Italy, Toronto at Bay and Bloor, the Biroteca location, they have 2 big screens, amazing authentic Italian food, and loads of beer. Also at OG Brewpub in the Junction at Keele and Dundas, with 120 seats, famous bar food, and 12 taps. Indy Ale House is an award-winning brewery featuring their flagship Instigator IPA and dozens of rotating monthly special release beers, perfect for takeout, dine-in, or bottle shop online orders when planning for game night. You can find the wonderful Instigator IPA that I'm holding here while I sip on my green tea, and Marco Polo Pilsner at finer LCBOs across the province as well. Hashtag Live Indy is the motto. Adventurous, fun-focused beers with a selection for everyone, from a healthy dose of in-your-face hoppy beers for the beer geeks to mainstream pilsners and easy drinking options. Indy Ale House is the go-to for game day. Visit www.indyalehouse.com to place your order today. And as always, we're going to jump over to some Maple Leaf talk because that's why you guys are here. Before we get to that, again, here Josh tuning in from our YouTube channel. He asks, who is the number 1 trade pick you guys are looking for the Leafs to get and why? So, Peter, you got an answer for Josh here?
Ooh, do I go the complicated route or the simple route of what I think they're going to do?
We love complicated here.
Well, let's go Jacob Chychrun. Ideally, Dubas said that he doesn't want to trade all of his top assets, first-round picks, top prospects for rental players. Unless he does do that for Timo Meier, because on the 32 podcast, Elliot Friedman did say that there's the possibility that they could go all in for Meier, get a top 6 forward, see how everything plays out, and then make a decision on him in the offseason. And if it doesn't work out, you can still flip him for what you get. So you'll still come out even Steven, whether you give up a top prospect at first, you can still get the same return if Meier still excels and he needs to sign elsewhere. So obviously it would be nice to get Timo Meier. I think they could tonight or this game against the second game against the Columbus Blue Jackets showed that, they could use some more depth scoring because, there were chances where, you see Alexander Kerfoot fanning on an opportunity to try and tie the game in tight on the net, and it just didn't quite work out. You need someone more substantial than Alexander Kerfoot in your top 6. There's no doubt about that. But then again, do you go that route, or do you go with someone, if you do pay that price, do you go with term like Chychrun? So I think more realistically, I think they go for depth. I think they go for depth middle 6 forward and a player like Vladislav Gavrikov. Maybe you go after Ivan Barbashev. Those appear more realistic. But then again, if you need to go all in, then you go Meier or Chychrun.
So to answer your question, and I'm glad you brought up Chychrun because we are going to get into that in just a moment here as well. I do think it's more going to be a depth deadline for the Leafs. You heard him talk about, obviously he doesn't want to give up Nyes in his first rather, unless it's for a good deal where it's almost like I can't say no. That said, we've talked about how deep this draft is, and even if the Maple Leafs have somewhere in the 20 to 32 range, you're going to get a solid player in the first round of this draft, and we haven't had a first round pick in a couple years now.
Since Rodion Namirov.
Yeah. So I do think it would be great to get Chychrun. I did tweet out, from the podcast Twitter, that Chychrun's the piece that's going to fall that allows the Leafs to get Meier. More kind of just trolling a little bit, just because I know fans just want that big name, and I get it. You'd love to get Timo Meier for sure. That said, I don't think, long term it works out cap wise. Especially if you want to keep that core forward together. Nylander's up for a contract after next year. Matthews is up for a contract after next year. And regardless of what, the folks in Arizona think, I do think Matthews comes back, and you're going to have to pay him. And at this point, you want to pay your players that you've drafted and you've had within the organization for a number of years, and guys that have rewarded you for drafting them, like Austin Matthews and his 2 Rocket Richards. And William Nylander, and you've stuck with Nylander for as long as you have. Why wouldn't you want to try and get him back, especially with the play that you've seen from him over the last couple of years? So with that said, I don't think Chychrun is the option here. I'm looking at a Jake McCabe. I really think McCabe is an option. I think the asking price is a little high, and I think we're going to see that come down a little bit. That said, they're in a position right now where they can ask for that, because Jake McCabe, is under contract. You can even if he gives you solid play, within a top 4 type of defenseman over the next 2.5 years, he's a guy that is worth his $4 million contract. On top of that, if you're looking for, a team like, maybe you're looking for Chicago to eat half his contract and you get him for $2 million. If he can play in your 3-4 and you get him for $2 million, that's something you have to consider. That said, I'm not sold that the Leafs need somebody on the back end. I'm not entirely happy with the way the defense has played since Morgan Riley has returned. That said, again, I'm not completely sold. I think your hole right now is that left wing spot on the second line. And I know Barbashev is a name that continues to come up. He's a name that, he's a feisty type of player. I remember interviewing him back at his draft combine in Mississauga. And, I talked to him about the whole Russian factor and coming over and all that. And this guy was very outspoken, spoke his mind, really down-to-earth type of guy, salted the earth type of person. And I think he fit in well. I think he'd fit in well with the Leafs, and that's a name that I wouldn't mind seeing come to Toronto as well. And maybe that's the piece that they look at. But Jacob Chychrun right now doesn't make sense for the Leafs, just in terms of cap and in terms of what you'd have to give up for him. And I just don't see it happening. You're not going to bump Morgan Riley out of the number 1 spot for Jacob Chychrun. If anything, you're going to do it from organizationally, and that would be a guy like Timothy Liljegren, who's come up and deserved every opportunity that he's got. So that said, as we mentioned, and as you can see on our ticker below, Jacob Chychrun was held out tonight from the Coyotes lineup for, and this might be the first time I've ever seen them actually quote this, trade-related reasons. So
at least they're being honest.
At least they're being honest. I couldn't help myself after though, and I tweeted out that, wouldn't it be funny if like no trade actually went through and he after the deadline he's still a Coyote and he was held out of the lineup for trade related reasons. What a shitty shadow that would cast over the organization that already plays at ASU.
I have to give I'm giving a shout out to Mike Stevens because when that whole entire tweet of Chychrun came out, he's just like, Islanders, we signed this dude to a contract extension, and if you want to know any details, you can eat shit. Coyotes, we're scratching our only star player because we're going to trade him. Here's his social insurance number. Yeah, I mean, they gave out so much detail in that, and they're being honest about that. And then you look at the whole Lou Horvat thing, and it's just like, well, wait, what? So, I don't know. I laughed pretty hard at that. That was kind of funny for that.
So we got to talk about Chychrun, though, because, obviously there is speculation around the Leafs. Now, it is coming out that the Maple Leafs and the Oilers are out of the running for Jacob Chychrun. Take that for what you will. You never know what could happen. We can always get blindsided by something. But word is Toronto is likely out of the running for Jacob Chychrun. That said, obviously how the lineup, chances are there could be a move within the coming days. Where do you think this kid lands?
Well, see, this is the thing, and I tweeted this out because initially before, there was I screen capped the tweets. Daniel Nugent Bowman said, doesn't sound like Chychrun is going to the Oilers or the Kings. Then, literally hours later, Frank Saravalli said that the Kings might be in on it. And then, again, per Mike Stevens from the Hockey News, Leafs upped their interest in Chychrun over the course of this past week per source. They're one of the teams in active pursuit. Then we hear Jeff Merrick say, Leafs are out of the running. So we're hearing multiple sources and everybody's saying that this team is out of it, but then this team is in it. So I honestly don't know because we don't know what's happening at this point. I guess, like you said, the only way we're going to find out is if the trade actually happens. I just pray to God it's not the Boston Bruins, and everybody is saying that right now. But my thing is, if they are trading for Chychrun, you could rest assured that Fabian Lysell is going to be a part of that deal because they don't have another blue chip or top prospect in their system that can be moved as a result for that. You have good depth pieces that you could add in, but you're not moving other names and keeping Lysell. That's not going to happen. Will that actually happen because they got some good young forward prospect depth coming up? I don't know. But then again, who knows what can happen? I just want a team that's not the Boston Bruins. There. How about that? Can I say that?
Yeah. I
okay, there we go.
I don't. And we spoke about this a couple weeks ago. I don't think the Bruins have what it takes to get Chychrun.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you mentioned their prospect pool, not great.
Yeah. But then again, anything can happen. But then again,
sure.
If the Maple Leafs want Chychrun, you are definitely giving up Matthew Nice. You are giving up that first in this year and possibly next year. You are giving up a good roster player and or another prospect. So again, they have the pieces.
You got to give up cap space to get him in there, unless Matt Murray goes on LTIR.
Yeah.
But I mean, quick comment here from Tim Barron, who's tuning in as well. He says he goes to the Kings. Hey Tim, you know what? If he goes to the Kings, I'm happy because he stays in the West. Mm-hmm. We don't see him. We see him maybe twice a year. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And then once his contract's up, he can come sign in Toronto like everyone wants him to.
And the Kings do make sense too. Again, there was report that the Kings are out, but then the Kings are in. And you look at their prospect depth. I mean, why wouldn't they be a suitor for them? I mean, Brand Clark, they still got Helga Grans, they got Jordan Spence, they got, Samuel Hellenius, Francesco Pinelli, Alex Turcotte. They have names to part with to be competitive right now with their current roster and the way that it's shaped up. So again, one source said another, one source said one thing, the other said the other, and it's just what's going on. Everybody's got a poker face on right now, and I just want to see who will kind of blink or try and say, hey, it's us, we're the winner kind of thing.
That's why nobody's going after Jake McCabe right now, because they don't want the mm-hmm. Chicago GM to come out and basically play all his cards and tell everybody who's going after him. So
yeah,
We saw that last year with the Leafs, obviously in the Marc-Andre Fleury discussion. But Tim also agrees and says that why would Boston mess with their chemistry? I couldn't agree with him more.
That's true. They're top team for a reason.
They're top team right now. Obviously, like we've all discussed, they don't have the future past this year. Right now, they're sticking with their core, and I think that's important. They need to run with what they have, and run it back one more time, and hopefully, Bergeron and Marchand and Krejci can bring them some luck in the playoffs and let them run with what they have. I mean, their depth right now with Taylor Hall and everybody, like they've got the depth. That's there's no question there. It's whether they can maintain, the heated run that they've been on through the playoffs as well over the last number of seasons. So that's a big question mark. Obviously they're running away with the regular season, but it's a different game when we get to the playoffs, and we all know that as Leaf fans because we never get past that first round. So
it's never easy.
It's never easy, and it's apparently for the Leafs, it's never easy in the regular season either when we play teams that we should be beating. Let's get into the back-to-back, the home and home with the Columbus Blue Jackets over the last two nights. Obviously, we're doing a post-game show right now. Take one last night with Ilya Samsonov taking the 3-0 shutout win. Joseph Wall comes in tonight. Played fairly well. Didn't get tested too much early on. And then the team just kind of let him down in front. Obviously couldn't clear the pucks. I know in the first goal they had multiple opportunities to clear the pucks. Couldn't get it done. And Leafs lose 4-3 in regulation to a team that is the forefront of the Connor Bedard race right now. Your thoughts on their play over the last couple of games, Peter?
I really don't understand how you can have that dominating effort like you did on Friday night, where you shut them out, dominate them possession-wise, and just play like you were supposed to against a bottom-seeded team. That was a textbook 60-minute game. Yeah, Columbus had their moments, but Toronto bounced back and still managed to play well. I don't understand, how you can have that good of a first period and just absolutely lose it, because it is absolutely embarrassing. It really is. It was embarrassing when they lost to Arizona, when they lost to Montreal. It's embarrassing when they lose to the Blue Jackets right now. These are important points that you should be taking advantage of right now. And yeah, you expect every blips every now and then. You expect teams to put their best foot forward. And let's face it, the Blue Jackets did. They came out flying in that second period and created havoc for the Maple Leafs. But a lot of the goals against were self-inflicted. Once again, and it has been for some time since the beginning of the season. And if they really need to clean up their play with the puck and their clearing attempts, because it's just absolutely god-awful at this point. It really is. And I'm looking at a difference from the heat maps and game flow charts on Natural Stat Trick. Toronto was literally the better team last night. And then you go to this game right now where Toronto absolutely dominated the first period. And then you see that goal that Columbus scored. That's when things started to take a downward turn for the worse. And Toronto dominated the middle of the area. Columbus took advantage of that with 4 goals in the slot, like the high danger zone area. That to me is terrible. It's bad. And I'm even going to quote, apparently, post game, according to Mark Masters, Engvall was benched for the rest of the second period after the second goal, after the Boone Jenner goal. And it's just, this is what Keith said, it's just habit slipping. It's not just Pierre, it's the whole line. They got to be competitive. They got to be great defensively. They got to be physical. And when all that slips, that's not acceptable. And we talked about how Engvall needs to utilize his size more, because he seems like he just lets up more in dealing with one-on-one pressure than William Nylander at this point. And Engvall is 6'4", 200 pounds plus. You expect more out of him from that. And then you hear comments of Keith, saying that Michael Bunting is crossing the line. He's got to stay within that line. These are instances that just created a microcosm and just a multiple of errors just piled up for the Maple Leafs. And again, Justin Hall, he tried to corral the puck and get control of it. Puck goes through his skates, and then it goes pass him for the empty net goal. He lets Kent Johnson walk in for the high stick, whatever it is, whether it's a good goal, bad goal. I'm not even going to touch that. It's because of the fact that he just let him walk in. Like, he shows no fight in front of the net. And this is the problem with Hall. Yeah, he's had good games lately, and even as before and after the injuries. But when he has plays like that, that's when you start to get concerns over his play that say, hey, these are simple mistakes and errors that you are causing too. But obviously it was a whole team effort that they lost with the clearing attempts and everything. But when you're a defender, you should be looking around who's around you. Hall wasn't even doing that. Johnson just walks in and just gets the game-winning goal. Absolutely unacceptable. Just that second period and even that game-winning goal, I really don't know what else to say. It was just an absolutely disgraceful effort after they had a really dominant first period, which looked like they were about to, go back-to-back for a 2-0 to start the stretch against bottom feeder teams. But now they're 1-1.
So what I'm going to say is you gave up 40 shots to a team that never should have got 40 shots against you.
That too, yeah.
If you want to be a playoff team, and like, let's face it, we're taking on Tampa Bay in the first round. Like, I don't think there's anyone sitting here questioning that. But if you want to go up against a team like Tampa Bay in the first round, and you're giving up 40 shots to the Columbus Blue Jackets, something's wrong. You're not doing your job. You're having missed assignments. You're hanging an AHL goalie, and this is no disrespect to Wall. He made 36 saves on 40 shots. Still had a 900 save percentage.
Yeah.
Hanging this kid out to dry.
Team didn't help him out at all.
Exactly. And Marner came out after last night's game and said, we didn't try and force anything. We didn't try and, play out of position to create offense. Well, you did exactly the opposite tonight. And you tried to create too much offense. You left up open holes and missed assignments. You couldn't clear the puck out of your own zone, and it created opportunities for a Columbus Blue Jackets team that's sitting at the bottom of the NHL right now with 36 points. 36 points in 53 games. A minus 69 goal differential. Like, this team is
too talented to have these kind of results.
Absolutely. And you're as close as you can be to getting Connor Bedard in Columbus, and you come out and you're beating the Maple Leafs, who should be finding a way to get more consistency in their play so they can make it past the first round for the first time in 14 years. Like, I don't understand this. And we talk about this. You can hear it in my voice. I'm getting tired of having the same discussion over and over again. It is a broken record. This is a team that plays down to their opposition. It's simple. I mean, there's no excuse here. Matthews has been out of the lineup for what, 5 games now? Mm-hmm. There's no excuse. You can't sit on this. We're missing our top star. You have capable players in your lineup. Morgan Riley is not your number one. He's not your number one. And you have to find a way to just swallow the pride here and say, you know what? Yeah, we signed him for 7 more years. He's going to slowly slip down our depth chart. Simple. Guys like Liljegren have played well, deserve to go up in the lineup. Sandin has played well, deserve to get more ice time. Mm-hmm. Mark Giordano, he's going to be your 5'6" guy. He's getting older. He doesn't have the same edge that he had. He's a little bit slower of foot, but he's still productive. Mm-hmm. Justin Hall, like, this is the only reason the Leafs need to go out and make a move for defenseman at the deadline. And I know I said earlier in the show they don't
especially
need
right-hand side.
Find a piece that's going to get you Justin Hall out of your lineup. No disrespect for Justin Hall. I don't think his career is going to go any further in Toronto.
No, or anywhere else for that matter.
He needs to start over, and it's simple. Like, it's no disrespect to him, but he was put in. I wrote a piece about this. He's given the Jake Gardner treatment in Toronto, put into a position where he's expected to play in a number 2 or 3 role, and he's not a number 2 or 3 guy. He's a 4-5, maybe. So he should be playing against opposition lines that are up to snuff in a 5-6 or a 4-5, not a 2-3. You put him against the more difficult opposition, he's not going to get the job done. Simple as that. And I saw it tonight. There was a play where he was, at the offensive blue line and could have easily got it in deep and instead flicked it like a little wrist flick from the blue line, and it barely got back into the offensive zone. Those are the plays. They're so small, but they come back to bite you in the ass. And
it's done that multiple times.
Exactly. And those are the plays you can't have in the playoffs. We all remember the Travis Dermott giveaway. Tried to spin a ram at his own blue line, lost the puck, giveaway. We all remember those plays. 100%. That's, those are the ones you remember, and those are the ones you swallow back and say, well, fuck, we're not any closer to getting past the first round because, we still make those plays. You got to stop making those plays. And the best way to do it is to get those guys out of the lineup. Put Jordy Ben in for all I care.
Yeah.
Right? Like, he's your sixth guy. Put him in. Play him at 6. Has that Muzzin type of, grinder mentality. Knows that he's not an offensive guy. He's going to play back. For what reason? It's been so clear that this year our blue line is not going to be your offensive juggernaut blue line.
Never was.
We don't have the Cale Makar. We don't have
Eric
the
Carlson.
Fox. We don't have the Eric Carlson. We could in a trade. I mean, like, shout out Dubas if you want to go make that. So at what point do you say, hey, Justin Hall, play back, quit pinching. It's not working out. Right. But I think he's one of those Sheldon Keefe guys, like Pierre Engvall. He's one of those Sheldon Keefe guys. And again, no disrespect to Keefe because he's gotten the job done as a coach. Yeah. And with that, we're going to jump to another Josh Brownlee question here because this guy's all over our YouTube right now and he's throwing us question after question here. Do you think if the Leafs don't make it past the first round, Keefe's job will be on the line? I'll take this one. I think there's going to be multiple jobs on the line. Obviously, Dubas will not be back. He might not even be back if they make it past. They could win the Stanley Cup and Kyle Dubas might decide not to be back. That's, in his hands at the end of the day. Sheldon Keefe, I think he would be gone. I really do. And I don't think it's a testament to what he's done here in Toronto. I think it's the easiest change to make is to get rid of your coach and keep your superstars. And, at the end of the day, it's not going to be Keefe's fault if they don't make it past the first round, unless he plays Pierre Engvall for 22 minutes a game. So, I mean, unless we see that, I don't know. What are your thoughts, Peter?
Or if he puts Alexander Kerfoot out in the dying situation to try and tie the game, because that hasn't worked out many times before. I honestly, the easy answer would be Dubas because he doesn't have a contract and they could just let him walk. But if we're looking for the change of scenery kind of thing, a fresh voice, then it's definitely going to be Keefe because like you said, this even happened in Edmonton when it wasn't even Dave Tippett or Todd McClellan's fault with everything going on. And it was all the general manager and the coach got the axe as a result of the general manager's moves. But Dubas has at least made some moves to try and tinker with this lineup. But then again, are you going to rely on Pierre Engvall in a key situation? Are you going to rely on Justin Hall in a key situation? This also comes back to Dubas to try and fix that because if you watch the game tonight, chances are if Engvall had to get benched, there's one of your top 9 forwards gone. Justin Hall making key mistakes at key moments or bad moments. That's going to impact you, especially like you said, in a playoff situation. So I do think that the easy answer would be Keefe because if they're out, Dubas doesn't have a contract anyways. So in terms of firing, it probably would be Keefe.
Well, and if you bring in a new GM, they like bringing in their guy, and Keefe's not going to be his guy. So
exactly,
or her guy. So I mean, to answer your question, Josh, I think Sheldon Keefe's gone if they don't make it past the first round. Now let's hope that's not the case because I don't want to be talking.
Because I love Sheldon Keefe. I think he's a great guy.
I love Sheldon Keefe as well, and I don't want to sit there, at the end of the season, and all of a sudden after the first round, we're talking about the rest of the playoffs. I want to talk about the Leafs into the second round. I want to talk about the Leafs into the third round. So, stop making those goddamn mistakes and let's get this all figured out so we can talk some more Leaf hockey as we get deeper into the playoffs. On that note, we need to see what we saw last night from the Maple Leafs. We need to see that mentality where you're not trying to push the play, trying to force the offense, because you do have stars that can get the job done when the opportunities present themselves. So your thoughts, Peter, on whether the consistency is something that we're going to see in these last 30 so games, or are we going to see the same Maple Leafs rewind, recycle, reuse the same storylines heading into the first round? Like, what are your thoughts here?
It's not so much the consistency against, competitive teams, because let's face it, the Maple Leafs play their best when they're playing against competitive teams. Boston, New York, despite some hiccups here and there, they have played relatively well against them. Tampa Bay even. It's those bottom-seeded teams or teams that are 20 and below that give them the toughest outs, and that should not be the case. And I know we're probably going to get into this, but I'm going to combine this with this section right here, because you have, 2 games against Chicago, I believe, 1 against Ottawa and 1 against Montreal. This is an important stretch right now, because Tampa Bay is only 2 points behind the Maple Leafs, and that could be a difference maker because home ice advantage. You have got to you need to go 4-0 during this stretch to create that separation, because these next 4 games are crucial. These are Ottawa's 24th, Montreal's 27th, and Chicago is 31st, 1 point above the Columbus Blue Jackets. If you don't have a winning record by the end of next week, I would be concerned, because how can you call yourself a playoff team? And even games earlier this year with Montreal, Arizona, Ottawa as well. How can you call yourself a competitive team when you have these poor outings consistently against bad teams? You can't do that. You can't play down to your opponent every single time. You got to have that mentality night in, night out. I don't know why they couldn't have that same mentality for a full 60 minutes last night than they did tonight. Because if last night's win was affecting them, they would have had a poor start. That was further from the case, because they came out guns a-blazing and dominated play at the beginning of the game. Where that went, again, self-inflicted wounds. They got to, like you said, maintain that consistency, but I think they got to maintain that consistency against in winnable games and winnable situations. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah, I mean, we were all talking about how this is the perfect chance to have Matthews out of the lineup, because look at the schedule. They're playing Chicago. They're playing Columbus. We need to get some wins. Look down at the ticker for a second there, Peter. Maple Leafs, since Matthews' injury, are 2-3-0. They are below 500 without Matthews against these teams. I mean, granted, they did play Boston as well since Matthews went down with his injury. Not ideal. Not ideal. And like you said, we got Chicago coming up. Should be a win. If you're watching the game right now, they're playing Winnipeg pretty tight as well. So Chicago is a team that the Leafs could potentially lose to.
Can be a thorn in team sides. I will say that.
No, absolutely. And remember, they still have Taves. They still have Kane. They still have Seth Jones. They still have guys. And you have a guy like Peter Mrazek that's going to be like, hey, I want to show the Leafs what they kind of passed on, even though I had a shit year. These are the teams that the Leafs need to win against. These are the teams that the Leafs need to build more credibility when it comes to who they can beat and who they can play against and who they can, you're at the bottom of the league, no problem. This is an easy win for us. If you want to be that top tier team, you have to win those games. And right now, the Leafs are not a top tier team in my mind when it comes to being able to close the door on these horrible teams, right? Like, those are the ones that are going to set you apart. Those are the ones that the Tampa Bays and the Bostons and, hell, last year's Florida Panthers would come out and beat. Even if the Panthers went down 3-0 in the first period, they found a way to come back. I think they had like 30 comeback wins last year.
Yeah, which is ridiculous.
Those are the ones you want to win. And if you're the Leafs, you need to find a way to get it done. You need to find the gaps in your lineup. You need to find where you're overplaying. You need to find the miscues that you're having in the defensive zone. You can't give up 40 shots to a Chicago Blackhawks team. You can't give up 40 shots to a Columbus Blue Jackets team. There's absolutely no excuse. Are those teams hungry? 100%. It's not to discredit those teams, but you want to be a top tier team. You want to, every year when they get knocked out in the first round, we talk about how the Leafs, or we hear the Matthews and the Marners and all them saying, yeah, this is a lesson learned. We're going to come back hungrier next year. We're going to come back hungrier next year. Every year, we're sitting there at the end of the season having the same conversation. And it's playing down to the shittier teams. It's not getting the job done when you can get the job done. They could have beat Montreal in the playoffs. They could have beat Tampa Bay last year in the playoffs. They had opportunities. I don't know what else can be said that, you know, is going to set this team apart when it comes to playing those weaker teams in the NHL.
Yeah, I just want to add one more comment too. Obviously, it talked about Mark Masters and Keith's comments on Engvall being benched, but you want to say you want a glimpse at how pissed Sheldon Keefe is. This is what he said as well on the second period. Just got outworked, outplayed. Mark, how do you explain that? I can't. You guys talk to the players. I'm sure you ask them the same questions. I can't do the work for them. Games like that are on the players. When you're supposed to go into a game where you need to, or not necessarily pad your stats, but get those like dominating wins, that is on you. The losses to Arizona on the team, against that overtime, that game against the San Jose Sharks on the team. Everything falls back to the team. Keith can instill it in them, or any head coach can instill them all they want. It's up to them to put the effort forward. And again, that effort was gone for 20 minutes, and they lost that game in 20 minutes.
Yeah, it actually ties in great with our next comment from Tim Barron, watching on our Facebook channel. Thank you, Tim. I think they're missing that grit leadership, like maybe a Kane, or maybe somebody that will call out their teammates that are making those lackluster mistakes. And 100%. I couldn't agree with you more. Like, we talked, it was, I think, the first year of the podcast when they got, you know, Thornton and whoever else and Spezza, we were talking about, oh, look at all the leadership in this room. And it was kind of like more of like a retirement resort a little bit, where like it was more of a fun room rather than we need to get the job done for these guys. And I think we're not seeing that as much anymore. The fun kind of whatever. It's still lighthearted in some senses, but at the same time, like you're not getting the guys who are speaking out, and we're not in the room, so we don't understand. We don't know what's being said or what, who might be speaking out. Tavares does come across as more of a quiet, soft-spoken captain in the media. That's just the way he comes across. I'm not saying he's like that.
We've seen it for years.
We've seen it for years. The Leafs need somebody who's going to be, at the forefront. Jake Muzzin was getting there. For me, Jake Muzzin was the guy who you almost need him in the room. He would call him out. He'd say, yeah, you know what? Tonight we played like shit. We need to get this done. We didn't do it. And that's the type of mentality. I 100% agree with what Tim's saying. I think they're lacking that little bit of leadership. He is going to follow it up and say, so blow it up, trade and get Chychrun, give up Nyes, give up Willie, give up Kerfoot, get somebody like Kane too. I'm not sure you want to blow it up yet.
No. Let's not jump the gun a bit.
I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Like, I do think to get a guy like Chychrun would be huge. Again, I don't think Chychrun's a guy that's been, very outspoken in his career, aside from saying like, I want out of Arizona. But who the fuck isn't saying they want out of Arizona? So that all things considered, like I still don't give up Willie. I depends on the price that you're gonna have to pay for him. That's gonna be the make or break for me. If you've seen what Matthew Nyes has done in the NCAA this year, like this guy's an absolute like truck. Like he's just an absolute truck, running over defenders, getting in front of the net, putting the puck in the net. I think, to me, Nyes is incredibly underrated as a prospect. A lot of people out there saying that are outside of the Toronto market are saying, Matthew Nyes is production.
Just above a point per game.
He's above a point per game, NCAA. And on top of that, like, we're gonna pump his tires a little bit. He's a Toronto prospect. Why wouldn't we pump his tires? But that said, I think, you got to give this kid an option or an opportunity as well, unless it's a can't pass up on this deal type of trade. And if it is for Chychrun, I think you do absolutely consider trading Matthew Nyes, 100%. Like, there's no question. And yeah, like Kerfoot could walk, no problem. Like there's $3 million off the books.
You could easily replace a Kerfoot.
I'd have no problem with that.
And to Tim's point as well, he just also said you never see anyone on the bench getting mad. Fair enough. You don't see that often, but there have been points last year and this season as well where you do get that sense where maybe players aren't happy with the way things are unfolding. I mean, I guess it was the game against Chicago when I think it was Austin Matthews yelling at Justin Hall for like poor plays and giveaways, and you could see him being livid on the bench. I think this year you hear or you saw like Justin Hall make a play and Mitch Marner throws his hands up. Like, they're showing that they care and they need to get mad, because let's face it, it's not that they hate the player. They just showing tough love. They need to show that, hey, we got to be on point with everything. So you did get to see like points of that, but you don't necessarily need to see them Jacob Trouba, like smacking the glass after a fight kind of thing, trying to turn things around. But then again, that kind of worked for the Rangers. So maybe you do need that little kick, that extra push from somebody to say, hey, let's get our act together.
No, I'll give him this. Matthews has probably shown the most emotion over the last couple of seasons on the bench. There is a lack of personality when it comes to in-game play. I mean, these guys may be the best dressed team in the league. So away from the rink, 100%. Yeah, like there's personality. I think they need more personality within the game. And I agree with that. I think you need to see a guy you need to see the Jacob Trouba come out and slam the door shut. He's pissed off. He made a bad play or somebody within the game made a bad play. You don't need to see the JT Millers smacking their sticks on the net and calling out his team publicly.
Oh, yeah. No.
Like those things don't need to happen. Yeah, I don't know. And sorry, Tim is asking who was it that grabbed the iPad from the teammate and threw it?
I don't remember. I'm sorry, Tim. I really don't.
I want to say it was on Philly. And it might have actually been Tortorella.
Or probably would do something like that.
But I think he said we don't because he came out after the game and he said we don't need these things on the bench or what have you.
Wait, I think it was. I think it was Chris Kreider. There's a video that says Chris Kreider takes and destroys iPad.
There you go. Tim's on it. Tim, you're coming on the show.
There you go, Tim. There you go, Tim.
Coming on the show.
He's on one.
I mean, so there you go. There's Chris Kreider. I mean, that's a guy that could have easily been the captain over Jacob Trouba. He's, again, personality. I think that's the biggest thing is you want to see more personality from these guys. And 100%, I couldn't agree with you more. More personality, more frustration, but reeled in a little bit. Like you can have that frustration and you can reel it in and not be like a dickhead like JT Miller. You could be, somebody like Kreider saying,
keep it within bounds.
You don't need the iPad to look at your miscues. You can, if you know the game, if you can process the game. This goes back to Martin St. Louis when he took over Montreal and he said, I don't want to just create plays. I want my players to play the game the way they know how to play the game.
Yeah.
Create opportunities the way they know how to create opportunities. You've got creative players. You have a Matthews, you have a Marner, you have guys like that. There's no reason why they can't, play the game they've played for years. I mean, we've seen Marner in London, the way that he ran that line with Dvorak and Tkachuk. Those are the things you want to see. And you can have that personality without being an asshole on the bench, essentially. But yeah, with that last kind of note here before we close this out, the schedule for the Leafs over the next little bit is going to be incredibly important. Obviously, we talked about Matthews being out of the lineup. You want a winning record without him because it just goes to show you that you can get it done even without your number one guy. That said, at home against the Blackhawks on Wednesday, at home against the lowly Canadiens on Saturday, in Chicago on Sunday, and then on the following Tuesday in Buffalo for a game before they hit before they play Minnesota and Seattle, so 2 tougher teams. Is this the most important 4-game stretch for the Maple Leafs right now?
Said it before and I'll say it again. Yeah. Simple as that. I mean, not only that, you have gaps in between now and Chicago. You have gaps between Chicago and Montreal to fine-tune, practice, and iron out every single detail. You got to be there's no such thing as a perfect game, but the Maple Leafs need to be perfect every single time right now, especially against the competition that they're facing.
I think for me right now, if you play the game you played against Columbus last night,
yeah,
you're going to be just fine.
You have that 20-minute effort like tonight.
Yeah, it was almost perfect. It was almost perfect.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest thing is going to be you're running with Samsonov right now.
Yeah.
He's going to be your guy, and you gotta find a way to support him and get the job done, because as we mentioned in the preseason on our show, this could be the year that maybe Matt Murray takes a back seat and Samsonov's your starter by the end of the season. I believe all 3 of us said it.
I think I may still lean towards Murray, but I didn't discredit that. But yeah, we were all on the same page.
So, I mean, in 26 games this year, 18-6-2 with a 232, 917, 3 shutouts. The numbers are speaking for themselves for a 25-year-old goaltender who is betting on himself. And I think they need to find a way to support this guy, get the job done like they did against Columbus. You don't have to go out and win every single game. I think these next 4, you should be winning all 4. If you go against Minnesota, in the 5th game and you lose it 3-2, 4-2, fine by me. I understand that.
It's a good team.
It's a good team. Seattle, again, another great team this year. Those games you can be a little bit more understanding with how it goes. But I need to see something from these guys. I need to see a good stretch of games here over the next 4. And if not, I think, there's a bigger conversation to have. And again, Tim's spot on.
Yeah.
Like, if they go 2-2, they need to make some noise at the trade deadline. I couldn't agree with you more, Tim. Yeah. I think regardless, they have to make some noise at the trade deadline. Even if they win these next 4 and lose one of the next 2 following that and go 5-1 in the next 6 games, they need to find a way to fill in that left wing spot on the second line. Cal Yarncroke did it for a little bit, but he's not the guy. You need to find that depth going into the playoffs and make sure that you've got the chemistry built up when playoff time comes, because we've mentioned it once on this show. We've mentioned it 100 times on this podcast. Playoffs are a different beast, and the Leafs need to find a way to get it done. And you can't go to 7 games again. You have to get it done in 5 or 6.
Yeah.
No questions asked.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else you wanted to kind of throw out there before we get going here, Peter?
No. This was a really great post-game chat. It's been a while since we had one, but this was perfect timing considering with the trade deadline news, the Leafs having a poor outing considering the good one. I thought, nothing else on my end.
Yeah, no, it's always nice getting on after a game because it's not outdated. We get we get the real Leafers, the real hockey fans on to kind of join in the conversation, which is always fun. And as always, we'll be back again next week with Alex in the house. Tell us about his BC trip and his I think he's just a big party out in BC on the slopes. So I'm sure we'll hear about that next week. With that, guys, check out Variety Sports Network, the new network that we are part of and very happy to be a part of. Check out Indie Ale House when you're in Toronto. Order them online. Great beer, wonderful beer, and that's coming from a beer snob. Otherwise, check us out on Twitter as always. You can find Alex at ahobsonmedia. You can follow Peter at P. Barricchini, or you can follow myself at Andrew G. Forbes. As always, you can also follow the show on Twitter at Sticks in the Six Pod. That's STIXINTHE 6IXPOD. Make sure you check out our socials, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Hit the subscribe on YouTube. We are continuing to do these live shows, and hopefully we got some big things coming this year as we continue to progress with this show as well. Until next time, episode 114 of the podcast. We'll see you next week.